Hello and welcome to Following On County Cricketer. I'm Jon Norman from Talk Sport. Steve Harmison's with us, winner of the County Championship back in the day, and from the Cricketer magazine, George Dobell, and Nick Friend, who's complaining about being tired. More of that later. Look, it's been an incredible conclusion to the County Championship. I'm not going to talk about Surrey. That's so much last week's story. But wow, what an ending. I saw a tweet, I think it was Kevin Howes yesterday, not complaining, but he was kind of a little bit upset that maybe the last day of the County Championship wasn't going to be too exciting. Middlesex wrapping up promotion yesterday. And, Yorkshire weren't going to lose, were they? And Warwickshire weren't going to win, were they? Well, Yorkshire did lose and Warwickshire did win. And it was quite the most incredible end of season that I can remember. Now, I don't know, and I don't know, but I'd like to know. George, let's start with you first. We've had last day drama before, of course. It wasn't that long ago we were all watching transfixed at Lords, Yorkshire and Middlesex, with Somerset watching, from back home in Taunton on the big screen as Middlesex triumphed. That was incredible drama, of course. Today, at the bottom end of the table, have you seen anything quite like what we witnessed today?
Oh, yeah, of course. You know what, it finished like that last year pretty much as well. It was brilliant. It was, do you know what, you do, and you can get yourself into a state at this stage of the season where you're a little bit tired and you're a little bit dispirited, in particular because of, the changes that are mooted. And then the game has a habit of reminding you how bloody great it is. And it was a really wonderful day. It was a really fun day. It was a surprising day. A lovely story behind Liam Norwell. Who's battled through all sorts of things. I've just written about it, so I don't want to bore everybody with it, but maybe have a read, I don't know. And it was really good quality as well, and it feels as if county cricket needed an advert at present, and by God it got one. And there were quite a lot of people watching. I think what we saw showed how much it mattered to so many people. And it was just a reminder of one required of what a super game we have, what a super competition we have. There are issues, of course there are, we all know there are, but there's a lot to like, and I wish we nurtured it rather more than talked it down. It was a terrific day, a really great way to go into autumn, and the last week or so I've tried to get around lots of grounds. New Road yesterday, Grace Road last week. I was meant to be in Manchester today, but back in Birmingham. God, it was a joy. Bloody loved it. Loved the company of colleagues, loved the quality of cricket, loved the stories that are out there. It was brilliant.
Yeah, well said, George. What about you, Harmy? From a player's perspective, sport is always about those scenes, isn't it? And it wasn't quite, a winner and a loser today because, of course, Hampshire, they couldn't win the title. Disappointed to lose, of course. But there was a winner, Warwickshire. They've avoided relegation. The losers were like Somerset a couple of years ago. They were watching on the TV, no doubt, following on the streams. What incredible numbers for that stream. I think when I started watching, when Hampshire's innings started, basically, I think there was about 2,500 watching. It then quickly jumped up to about 4,500. And as they started losing the wickets, I think George mentioned before we went to air, it was up to about 16,500 watching by the time Liam Norwell did a little bit of it. It was a bit like Devon Malcolm back in the day. It wasn't 9 for 57, 9 for 64 or something ridiculous. But from you've been there, both sides of the equation. Give us a little bit of an idea of how those two dressing rooms in Birmingham and in Yorkshire are going to be feeling tonight.
The Yorkshire one will be a difficult one to be in. I would imagine Yorkshire's been a difficult dressing room to be in all summer. Even from the 1st of January when the players reported back, I was there for the first few weeks, and it was a difficult dressing room then because of all the uncertainty, what was happening, and then the roller coaster of their season. They didn't start too badly, I didn't think, Yorkshire, and they just couldn't win. Literally, Yorkshire's problem this year is haven't been able to win. They've won one game, drawn 7 all summer. So look, it's heartbreaking for Goffey, it's heartbreaking for Otis, but brilliant for Warwickshire. Liam Noble, that guy. You got to be so pleased for Liam Noble. He was nearly on a plane to the West Indies. He nearly got into a Test match squad at the start of March. He was an injury reserve, so fair play to him because he has suffered. And I know what bowlers are like. It took me back to the you mentioned county championship winner 2008. Probably the greatest day I've ever had on a cricket pitch. Better than 2005 because this was my club. Me and Collie were the history of Durham County Cricket Club. 92 was the first start. 96 we came there. 2008 we won the championship. We won the championship at the Dartford Tunnel because we bowled Kent out. Again, scenes like what we had at Hampshire today. Callum Thorpe got 7 for the jubilation of everything that was going, and we had to wait. We were on the bus waiting for Hampshire and Notts to blow up before we won the championship. So I know what it feels like. And it's great. It's an unbelievable feeling. I know they didn't win the championship, but from a player's point of view, I don't think I've been relegated, but I have. Well, I might have, but because I played for Durham, and Durham weren't very good back in the day. But to have that, to be in that dressing room of what Warwickshire have, that will be like winning the title. Because, like George mentioned, so much going on up and down, and where the cricket could be in the next sort of year and a bit. And if you end up in the second division, that's a long way back if Strauss gets his way with three conferences of 6.
That is pretty amazing what he's just said there, about winning the championship with Durham being a better day than winning the Ashes in 2005. Because 2005, that was a big day for the country. I mean, most of us, with any interest in cricket, remember what we were doing, where we were, and what happened, and all the rest of it. So it just is another reminder of how much this matters to people. And I kind of feel that Andrew Strauss has lost his buoyant enthusiasm for the game somewhere. And I kind of wish he was here. I say this to colleagues sometimes, that if we all go through these stages, that if you've lost your way a bit, if you're feeling dispirited, go to Taunton. Go and watch a couple of days in Taunton. Spend some time in the press box in Taunton. It's great fun. And reconnect with the game. And I kind of think that's what Strauss ought to do. He ought to come and see how bloody good it was. He had to see how much fun it was, the quality, the intensity, the passion. And in a way, this relegation will cost Yorkshire nothing in terms of finances. But by God, it will sting. It'll hurt. And that is kind of the perfect disincentive, isn't it? We've got something so good. We've almost got it so good with promotion and relegation. We should be seizing it and hugging it and protecting it.
What about you, Nick? There's been so many stories in and around the individuals that have taken place. I mean, we've just heard about Liam Norwell. We know about the injury problems he's had. The fact that he came so close to playing for England, and he could have played for England this summer. But what are the stories that you're going to be taking away from the county championship this season as you look back?
So, like, all the 6 months.
I mean,
I think actually, just on the
if you can, from an
I'll give it a go.
Perspective.
Just for that, actually, just one more thing on Norwell, and I guess what went on today. I mean, I would wager that if Liam Norwell's fit for more than 4 games, Warwickshire are nowhere near this predicament in the first place. But equally, if he'd not pulled up fit for this week, obviously, I mean, they wouldn't. They'd probably be in Division 2. I mean, but equally, it's funny. Yorkshire will say the same thing. I mean, Matt Fisher missed virtually all season, having started the season really well, having impressed the Caribbean. Ben Code played very little by his standards, and I mean, beyond everything else, I mean, actually, in a year where taking wickets has been, unusually the challenge for teams to I think it speaks volumes that 2 pretty good sides who had 2 pretty stacked batting lineups, sort of lost their key weapons and didn't fall apart, but just couldn't win games. As Simon says, Yorkshire won once; they didn't lose every week. They just couldn't get over the line, and that ultimately, I think Kent were in exactly the same position until a couple of weeks ago. So they won a couple. Gloucestershire will look back and think if they'd won a couple of close games they lost early season, or then they could well have beaten Northants twice, and then they lost them once, drew them once. Obviously, win their last 2 games with a very good spinner on turning pitches, and actually in Tom Price, who I think is has gone under the radar somewhat, but I think is going to be seriously good. If you speak to a lot of batters in Div 1, they've been extremely impressed. They took an 8 for last week, and which ironically aren't, I think, with the best figures in Div 1 of the year for about, I don't know, 5 days, until Norwell took his spot today. But yeah, I mean, there are so many stories, always are, aren't there? I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, so I was at Sussex yesterday to watch one of the most extraordinary afternoons batting I've ever seen between Ali Orr and Tom Haines. I know there's a lot of talk about Tom Haines, but Ali Orr, I think, is going to be exceptional. I mean, he reminded me of, it's like watching Trescothick at times, and but I mean that's just the last 2 days. I mean, if I could go back to the number of guys who, I'm always just pleased for the good guys, and you know, you look at Toby Rowland-Jones getting through a season not just unscathed but taking 70 odd wickets. Tom Helm, you know, together the two of them have hardly played a game in Ribble cricket for the last few years, and Helm's missing now because he's on England tour in Pakistan. I mean, they're really lovely stories of good guys who frankly have deserved a bit of luck. I mean, Will McPherson tweeted earlier, completely agreed about Ed Barnard, and you know, Ed Barnard, very good cricketer for a very long time. Thoroughly deserved his shot at Div 1. It would have been a real shame if he'd joined Warwickshire on the way down. I mean, he'd been back at New Road next year on the other side. You know, it's been heartening to see, good people do well, and I thought Surrey were excellent champions, and you know, probably took the foot off the gas a bit this week, and but you know, if they'd gone through the season unbeaten with the tools they had, with the depth they had, with the number of players they had missing to England and franchise cricket a lot of the time, you know, and then also, of course, you just look at the number of runs. I mean, if you sort of hark back to March, and all the talk was about pitches and how you weren't producing runs, you know, batters for Test cricket. And ironically, I think the way that this summer has gone it's not fixed anything. I wouldn't say it's fixed things, but the summer has ended with England picking bowlers based on what they've done in the Championship, because they've seen how hard it is to take wickets on good pitches. Whether that's Matt Potts, whether that's you know, Sam Connor's got a Lions go. Liam Norwell got a go last winter on the back of playing a very good pitch at Edgbaston. So it is possible. And then obviously we've seen Harry Brook, who had a brilliant start to the summer, and has carried that through. And so I feel like it's worked in a lot of ways. It worked well in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the numbers on the stream today. I mean, if I was being slightly facetious, play devil's advocate, I mean, 17,000 at its peak, you know, that would just about fill 3/4 of Craven Cottage, wouldn't it? We don't want to kid out. You know, there's so much good about it that I don't think we need to overplay, if you know what I mean. What happened, perhaps, but no. Look, I thought.
I think we do. I think.
Well, not necessarily.
I think
no, but
survival.
No, absolutely. But I don't necessarily think 17,000 is a figure that, you know, people who have, you know, who people are on the other side of this, let's say, who see a chance to squeeze the game will you know, be particularly taken by. That's but no, look, I thought today was fantastic. I mean, look, George had Lancashire not done the business yesterday, as we said, George would have been at Old Trafford for us today, and we the cricketer would have been we'd all been sat on the stream rather kicking ourselves for not having someone on, you know, in place. So it's mad what the game can do. As I say, I went to Worcester thinking I'd watched the last Rights Division 2 and watched the second team coming up, and in the end I went to the only game where a ball wasn't bowled. So that was more for me, you know. Nice little 5:30 train, but we made mistakes.
May I just come in again on Liam Norwell, because the injury has been sort of used as the excuse for what happened, but actually he was very emotional after this game. What actually happened is he had his first child around the time of that Caribbean tour, and admits he didn't answer his phone for a month. It's entirely possible he was called up. The selectors were trying to get hold of him. So basically he had a son, and a day old he contracted meningitis, and as Liam Norwell puts it, he almost died. And at that stage, cricket's out the window, isn't it? Who cares about that? And thankfully he's come through that, but he obviously had quite a long time in hospital and quite a long time worried, and he actually hurt his back because he spent so long sleeping in a hospital chair. So, there are all these things going on in the background of people's lives that we don't necessarily know about. And it's an amazing story and a really lovely story that someone who's been through so much and works so hard and is just a good old-fashioned pro in lots of ways has had this moment where he's able to sort of look back at a desperately traumatic time with a bit of joy. It's a lovely story, but it's not just about injury. It's there's a lot more depth to it than that, perhaps.
That just tells you everything about characters we've got playing our game, and it's as simple as that. Yes, we've got a job. I said on the Cricket Collective this week about why county cricket needs to change too much. Why are people saying we play far too much? I don't think there's a problem about playing too much. I just think there's a problem with scheduling, is when it fits into the calendar around the 100. And I think what my biggest thing was, I went to Durham for 4 days. I couldn't do the second game because I had to do my day job, because I had a couple of other things to go on, so I missed the trip to Notts. But I loved them 4 days at Durham. It was back where I belonged, in a dressing room. It was back in the environment I was comfortable in, and watching the game of cricket that I enjoy watching. There were a few more people the next day. Some very, very good, talented players playing but they were making a living. That's the thing that I think this review has lost its way a little bit. Is we've got, yes, there's a lot of people saying we've got dead wood. We possibly have, but there's a lot of people trying to make a living and forging a career for themselves, as well as hopefully clubs trying to develop younger players to play for England. And I watched Sussex, who were bottom of the championship. And whether they deserve to be bottom of the championship or not, I'm not so sure. But I looked at that team and I thought there's about 3 or 4 individuals there that could play for England. Really could. I looked at 3 or 4 individuals and thinking, if they were playing if you drop 2 or 3 of them into a Surrey dressing room or a Lancashire dressing room, wouldn't look out of place, probably thrive a little bit more. So are Sussex doing it badly by neglecting 4-day cricket and throwing all the youngsters going? There's going to come a time where them young players are going to need help and direction, and Pujara give them that. But I also looked at them 3 or 4 individuals and I thought, you know what? If you've got a chance if you continue to play for England here, because you've got talent. And that sometimes gets lost when you're talking about review systems and going to 6 teams, because we want all the best players playing against the best. We don't live in a perfect world. We never have in this country. And for me, that's the beauty about county cricket.
Well, just quickly on Norwell as well. He wasn't actually fit to play. He'd been ruled out for the season. Genuinely, he'd been ruled out for the season. And he desperately wanted to play because he felt he had let his colleagues down, which of course he hadn't. But he felt he had, because he hadn't been able to play. And so he desperately wanted to. He's wearing, I think I've said in my piece, he's wearing more, he's strapped up like a dummy, like a mummy, rather. And he wanted to play, and he's just taken a 9 for. I mean, it's incredible. Because he was desperate, and it matters so much. So, lovely story, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Harmy made mention of the review, the proposals. Where are we, George, in terms of that review? There's a lot of anger on social media, and social media isn't always the gauge of really where anything's going ever. But essentially, you are the man in the know. To get these proposals through, I'm right in saying you need 12 of the 18 counties to agree to them. 15 of the counties are member-led, which means essentially it's going to have to go to a vote within those counties, I think. What are the chances of the proposals going through? And am I right in thinking that essentially what's on the table can move in terms of T20, i.e. it'll go from 7 to the 10 games that the counties want, but there's less movement in terms of the county championship?
Well, that's that last bit's sort of my theory. Where are we, first of all? Let's answer that bit. That there's almost no chance of those plans going forward in the current shape. Or pretty much none. Miracles happen. I've just watched one here. But I'd be really, really surprised. Almost universal condemnation from the counties. I think Strauss has overplayed his hand. I think he thought he had more power than he had. I think the previous regime would have helped him push these things through. but we've got a more democratic regime. We're seeing the counties more respectful of their members. There are none of the non-disclosure agreements that we saw when they tried to implement, or when they did implement the 100. So I think people have looked at what he said and said, pfft. So I don't think they'll go through. Now, you make a point. Is it possible that, so at the moment, this season there were 7 T20 home games, and it's been cut to 5 in the schedule. Is it possible that if the ECB say, oh, we could maybe go back up to 6 or 7, that the counties have come round? Sure it is. It is definitely possible. I hear those conversations have started to happen. We're currently up to 6. But I think that actually that there is some concern about the lack of first-class cricket. And it's not just that the county executives are worried about what their membership think, although that is a factor, make no bones about it, because they're member-run club and they can vote them out of office. But they're also genuinely concerned that this isn't a particularly good schedule, that there isn't enough championship cricket, that there's this ridiculous idea for sort of festival games during August. Utter waste of time. So I think that at the moment, I think it's unlikely there'll even be a vote, and that Strauss has been given out, and that's an end of it. But there will no doubt be conversations in the background. And the big caveat here is there's also an ongoing financial review, which Fanos Hira, the chair of Worcestershire, is in charge of. Now, he has access to figures and facts and data at the ECB that no one ever has done before. And I think that what he may find, my hypothesis would be, is that the 100 is costing a huge amount more money than they are telling us. Massive amount more. And at that stage, when we receive that data, and we're talking 6, 7, 8 weeks away, then we should have another look at everything. It doesn't necessarily mean that the 100's flawed just because it's very expensive. I think Cricket Australia spent a lot of money on the Big Bash, didn't necessarily turn a profit for a long time, but it still did a great job. But let's have all the facts. Let's have the truth. So there's a lot still to play out here, and I don't think anyone, Normo, could tell you with any degree of certainty what's going to happen. You'd be guessing. But right now, Strauss's review is not looking as if it's going to be passed in any way like its current form, and there's going to be a lot more debating in the weeks to come.
What are you hearing in Durham, Harmy? Because of course, you've got to travel miles for a 100 team there. Durham are not a team that would be in the top division. They're the kind of county that would lose however many days cricket. I mean, I've been where you live. You've got county cricketers living on every bloody street. It's ridiculous. You're just churning them out. They all go to the golf club. I mean, it's just a talent factory. But what are you hearing in and around the county that you refer to as home? Yeah,
a bit like what George has said. The members want to watch cricket. It's as simple as that. A lot of people in this country want to watch cricket. I don't think that, like George has said, I don't think this gets off the ground. I think in the review, 12, 13, 14 points, not a problem with, because they're simple. But the big stumbling block, I think, is championship, first-class cricket, where the scheduling is. Obviously, there's a lot of members don't like the 100, especially the ones that haven't got access to their own space, their own ground. Whether the 100 goes down the IPL roll and gets 2 more teams. If it does, Durham will be one of them, because geographically they've got to get a little bit further north of Leeds. Will that appease them up here? Probably not, no. Because there's a lot of people like watching championship cricket up here. I was looking at it the other day and you're thinking, if you're a member of a cricket club and you haven't got 100 on your doorstep and you're a county member, go into the new schedule. You have a bad 50 over competition, 5 T20 games and 5 championship games. You've got 25 days of cricket as a member of a cricket club. Yeah, 25 days in a whole summer. It's ridiculous. So I think that's what they'll be saying, and I know for a fact they are saying it because they told me that last week when I was at Durham. And I still can't understand why the schedule can't be changed in such a way where we've seen what to this game is promotion, relegation. I think Strauss is he's got all the good intentions of the England cricket team. But I've said this many, many times. It's not cricket in this country is not just about the England cricket team. that football in this country is not just about the Premier League. I managed at non-league level. I love non-league football. A hell of a lot of people in this country love non-league football. They love their club, and the club needs to play grassroots cricket. They love their club, and that's the thing that I think this review has missed. Yes, we'll produce cricketers. We will produce cricketers. Produce many cricketers to play at home. We just can't produce cricketers to play away from home. But for me, and for probably what the members are saying is, the first class game of cricket in this country has been very, very difficult. It has been very, very tough to play. There's been a lot of games. There's been a lot of cricket played. I don't see why that needs to change for us to think that we are going to be a better team because we play less cricket. I think it could be scheduled better. Yes, give people more time off. For me, first class cricket should be revolve around the test matches. You should play first class cricket up until the first day of the second test in the first half of the summer. And then you should play at least 2 4-day games leading into the next test series, which is in the back end of the summer. And then work your calendar around that. For me, that should be common sense. But not common sense doesn't always prevail in suits in making decisions.
Just on that as well, if it were really about high performance only, if it were really about high performance of the England team, you wouldn't have a bloody great tournament in the middle of August, taking the prime weeks of the summer that no one else plays. Let's be honest, it's not about high performance. They've got an agenda. Some of it's about high performance, but you can't honestly tell me that basing the most funding, the best weeks, all the scheduling, compromising everything else for a tournament that no one plays at international is about high performance. He's done a very poor job, sadly, Andrew Strauss. I've been reminded many times this week of the Dad's Army theme. You know, who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Strauss, if you think the counties are done? Because they're not, and he's just been beaten by them.
Nick, sometimes when I cast my eye at the way cricket seems to be going, and I think sadly it is going the way of T20 domestic leagues everywhere over international cricket. If we move the counties argument to one side, kind of. But I think to myself, I'm not sure I would have got into this sport in the way that I did if it was as it's going to be back at where I started watching. Do you feel the same? Like, for somebody that writes so passionately and so well with such knowledge about all formats of the game. I mean, you were churning out the articles in much the same way during the 50 over cup as you were during the county championship. But if your schedule suddenly looked so skinny in terms of the 4-day stuff and so weighted towards the white ball stuff, 50 over, 20 over, 100 ball, are you as interested? Does Nick Friend, the cricket fan growing up, are you as interested writing about that as you are about 4-day stuff?
Probably the wrong person to ask this to, because I've got a really probably quite boring probably two quite boring answers to this, which is just what the radio wants. I got into the game through playing it, and I think I grew up playing, and then I think frankly, if I'd rocked up to watch one ball games, like I'd sort of been sold what I was playing, and that was good enough for me. My other boring answer is, it's a good question. I mean, my boring answer is that, as I said earlier, with talking about, I guess, good things happening to good people and that kind of thing, I've always loved the human side of sport, and look, whether or not it's 4-day cricket, 5-day cricket, 100 ball cricket, 60 ball cricket, you've got humans playing it, and for the time being at least. And I, while there are human, as George just spoke about Liam Norwell, Liam Norwell just before. I mean, I think I've honestly always found the human side probably more interesting than anything else. I mean, that's my boring answer. Which that actually, you give me cricket, and I watched, I did a lot of roll-on stuff, but I did a lot of 100 stuff as well, and I did a lot of blast, and have been with England women a lot of the summer, and so give me cricket and I'll watch it and I'll enjoy it, and I will write about it. But but speaking, to be honest, almost speaking as the young player that I was once, I I love a game. I do love a long game of cricket, and that's not saying I don't like T20 cricket. It's not saying I've not enjoyed the 100, but I like a game with. I don't know. I've always just enjoyed. I really enjoy the Royal London Cup because I really enjoy 50 over cricket, and by the sounds of it, I'm in a very small minority these days, in that sense. But no, yeah, look, I don't know. Maybe a tad. It would have affected the way I came into the game, but genuinely, I got into it through. Yeah, I guess playing initially, and then sort of human stories around it, and I think they will always exist. However you frame the game, whatever's on the line. But I don't disagree with what George and Harmy are saying on the more important issue than my childhood.
No, but look, for me, John. But when I look at what the arguments are, and they say there's franchise cricket around the world, and this, that, and the other, there's place for everything. That's the thing that I get annoyed at. There's place for everything because some players are developed in a different way. Like I mentioned before, the Sussex players, you got to start somewhere. You have these leagues, you have them all over the world. You embrace the 100, but you make sure that everything flows into it, and you make sure that people are given a chance to find their own pathway, find their own way through. There are going to be players that go off and chase money. Not a problem. Let them go. See you later. Kieran Pollard's, all these guys. The things I have in likes of Chris Gale and AB de Villiers, they played 100 tests before they went and changed their money. There are some players who aren't interested in playing test match cricket. Liam Livingston, great talent, but probably would never play another red ball game. You'll go and play franchise cricket around the world. So be it. Let him go and play. But there are players who are playing and earning a living and trying to be the best player they possibly can. And that's always starts at first class level. It always starts at the bottom, and then where they go from there, so be it. But for me, I think we're trying to change far too much where we don't need to change. We're trying to reinvent a wheel that doesn't need reinventing. Let people play and see where they get to. Let people make their choices.
Can I jump in very quickly on that? Just broadening.
Yeah.
Just broadening what Harmy just said and I guess once again going back to that human side of it, and something Harmy said earlier as well, that one thing I've always felt, and where I have been quite uncomfortable with a lot of the rhetoric and the review itself, is that I don't think, I've written a lot about Michael Hogan actually in the last week. I think he's a perfect example of this, albeit not English. 28-year-old, made his debut at 28, didn't have a traditional route in the game. If the cards had been dealt differently, he might have played the odd test for Australia if he'd stayed in Australia. But came over here, became a very, very good counter pro. Just retired at 41. He's had a brilliant career. He's taken 900 plus professional wickets. Ultimately, he wasn't going to play for England despite his UK passport, and he wasn't going to play for Australia because he was over here. None of that means he has failed. In fact, I would say he's had one of the great careers of this century. And where I get uncomfortable is is the idea that high performance means you played for England and not that you've got the most out of yourself. There will be a lot of professional athletes who are not good enough to, or don't get the opportunity to, or the cars don't, or things don't go their way, and they don't make the very top grade. They don't have the international career that Joe Root's having, and that James Anderson's had, and the Harmy had. But none of that means you failed. I mean, take Graham Onions. Look, he played 9 tests or something, which is mental. In a different era, he'd have played millions, but he was behind Harmy and then behind Jimmy. That doesn't mean you've not done well, and it also doesn't mean that if you say that's where I've always been quite uncomfortable. It's not. You shouldn't be. For me, just because you might not be an international cricketer, it doesn't mean that you don't have a place in the professional sport. If you look at all those great Olympic stories, they're often of the blokes who couldn't swim but won, but won the race because everyone else got disqualified. And granted that's extreme. There is for me, there are a lot of very good. Take Darren Stevens. Look, Steve should probably have played for England in white ball cricket at one point or another, but he didn't. He's retired. He might not retire, but he's been released at 46 years old. None of the fact that he didn't play international cricket, doesn't have an England cap, doesn't mean it shouldn't mean anything. You can look at the success of careers can be framed in enough ways that you shouldn't be carving up a game solely to feed into your international team. Yes, you need to look after the guys who've got the potential to make the grade as best you can. That's why a lot of the review is very good in terms of the restructuring of the Lions, in terms of the way that the actual pathway for the players with high potential. are looked after and looked at. And a lot of that's what's fallen away with COVID. But for the guys underneath, and for the guys who might make it, might you have a brilliant year. Someone like take someone who's had a really good year this year. I mean, who hadn't played international cricket. Take Ben Compton, for example. Let's say he cracks out the same numbers 3 years in a row, and then suddenly, for all the algorithms in the world, he might force his way into contention. And even if he doesn't, what he's done this year, and actually we were talking about good stories earlier. I mean, what a brilliant story for the summer that was. This guy played twos cricket to lose 28 and got his chance and was averaging 100 through the first month of the season. And has probably guaranteed himself another 3, 4, 5 years of a career. There is a lot of you can have a successful career without a system being funneled into, I guess, focusing mainly on the international game. And I don't think the guys, and as I say, there are a lot of guys who I really admire on the counter circuit who know they're not international cricketers, but know that they work their arse off to get as much out of their bodies and their careers as they possibly can to succeed at whatever level they're good enough for. And I do think it'd be really sad if that was lost in, because talking about human stories, that's a lot of them, and you're cutting a lot of humans adrift. For the England team.
Right, we are fast approaching the back end. we're slowly approaching the end of the show. Look, there was it was a story that started last week actually, and I don't actually know the answer. I know that Jack Leach mentioned something on Twitter about why he didn't play for Somerset, but essentially I was at the Oval watching Surrey beat Yorkshire. Ben Folkes, Ollie Pope had just played in the 5th Test match against South Africa, and then suddenly they're back at the Oval playing for Surrey. George, tell me why it was that some players were released by the ECB and some players weren't released by the ECB. Can you just run through it?
Yeah, as a general rule, it's always up to the player. The ECB will take the flak, always, but it's up to the player. So what you're alluding to, really, let's be honest, and what people will be talking about is why Joe Root wasn't playing for Yorkshire.
So, George, just
Yes?
very, very briefly, because I was going to ask a specific question. Because back in 2016, Adil Rashid didn't play for Yorkshire, right? For that game at the end of the season. There's some stuff had happened. I think a family member was ill. But essentially, and at the time, I thought it was pretty out of order to question the guy. But they did question him. The coach questioned him and the captain publicly.
Yep.
So, are we going to see the same thing for Joe Root?
On Twitter, Andrew Gale said he wanted to take 11 people onto the pitch, or wanted 11 people to follow him onto the pitch, I think he said, which meant there would have been 12. Come on. Anyway, a lot of people in Yorkshire, a significant number of people in Yorkshire, have never forgiven Adil Rashid for that. And I think that's disgraceful, and I suspect that where I think that those thoughts are based. And I also suspect that when the whole story is told, the reason Adil Rashid didn't want to be in that dressing room all the time is for the reasons that Azim has made public. Now, having said that, I think Joe Root has asked for time off, and I think he's deserved it. I think he's worked his arse off for several years, and I have nothing but praise for him having the bravery to say, do you know what, I need to spend some downtime, I need to spend some time with my family. If he wants to go and play golf with Piers Morgan, that strikes me as a weird way to spend his downtime, but bloody good luck to him. He owes England nothing. He's worked his arse off. I saw him as captain. I saw him work himself to the frazzle of a man where everything in his life was beginning to feel the strain. I really regret if he gets any criticism for this. They've been living in bubbles for a couple of years. He gave it everything. He bloody deserves a holiday, is my own view.
Can I just add on? I've actually spoke to Lisa Kiteley, who's just left as England women's head coach, and something she said that really resonates with what George said actually is that it's easy to say that these guys have had time off. That it's not been like they've been playing cricket all the time and weird lockdown and all that kind of thing. But actually, the time off they've had in the last 2-3 years, no one's had the chance to get away, to actually escape cricket. And this is really, if you think about it, the first proper time at the end of the 2022 season for 3 years where guys have given the chance to get away from the sport, can actually get away from the sport. Otherwise, you've still been you've not been able to get that far away, have you? You've been you could sit at home and not play cricket, but what are you going to do? You're going to turn on the TV and watch it instead. Like, if he wants to go and play golf ahead of, a winter where, yes, it won't be quite the same restrictions as the past, but he's off to, he'll be away. When will he be leaving, George? 2 months? 2 months time?
Middle of November, I would have thought they'll go.
Yeah, I'd have just thought.
Do
you earn a bit of leeway, to be honest.
Harmy, considering he's not playing in the T20 World Cup, he's not going to be playing in January. Do you think, knowing Joe Root as you do, that he might wish he had played for Yorkshire?
I don't think so. I hope not. And anybody that has a go at Joe Root for not playing in this game wants a head red. For the what he did as England captain, what he's been doing countless times over the winter. He's batted by himself for nearly 3 years in winter in cricket. So, and they lived in bubbles, everything that goes. Yes, he's been seen playing golf and obviously Piers Morgan's in that group. I tell you one thing, he will say, John, yeah, he might think he could have played in that. He didn't probably volunteer to play with Piers Morgan. He was put with Piers Morgan because it's at the Alfred Dunhill competition where you get put with different people and celebrities, and that's unfortunately the luck of the draw. Unfortunately, Joe's got a chance, and he's had the chance and misfortune to play with Piers. Sorry, Piers, but yeah, Varney's up there. I think Goffey's been up there many, many times. But the crux of the matter is, Ollie Pope, Ben Folkes, for me, had a history this year with Surrey County Cricket Club and a chance to win the championship. Ben Folkes nearly got in my team of the summer, championship team of the summer. Nearly. John Simpson got in ahead of him for what Folkes did at the start of the summer. But Ollie Pope got in my team of the summer because what he did before the first Test match, he got Surrey to propel themselves to win the championship. So they had one eye on what was happening always. Joe didn't. He hardly played if he did play at all. If Harry Brook was in England and playing golf, then I might have had something to say. But not Joe Root. Not for what their kid's gone through the last sort of 4 or 5 years. He's been England captain in arguably the toughest time to be an England captain in the history of our game during COVID. Ben Stokes had some time off. Yes, he's going to the 2020 World Cup. But English cricket will benefit Joe Root having this little time off, Rinda off. He'll go to Pakistan, go to New Zealand and be ready for the Ashes. Whether he played at Yorkshire this week or he didn't play at Yorkshire this week, for me, if anybody has a go at that, they want their head red.
I agree. For what it's worth, Normo, and you and I have been on the road many times, if I had my life again, and I say this as a guy of a certain age, with children of a certain age, and in the middle of a divorce, I would work far, far less and make sure I had a lot more holiday with my family. I got that wrong. I'm glad he's not.
Actually, Joe Root said as much, didn't he, when he said as much since he let go of the captaincy as well, that he realised how much it was consuming him. And, I suspect part of that reflection process is realising that, when you need a break, you need a break. And, if it inconveniences a team that ultimately has played 3 championship games this season. And, I think Sussex is a pretty good example, actually. Look, they finished 17th out of 18. They've been, frankly, desperately poor. But if you put Ollie Robinson and Jofra Archer into the team, yeah, they're a much better team. They're essentially contracted. And you are naive to the point of negligent if you're a county relying on guys who are on central contracts to come and bail you out. And, look, yeah, Joe Root, the type of guy he is, could easily have said, yeah, what's one more game of cricket? Could have gone and done it, and look, he loves the club and all that stuff. But you've got a big old squad. And as we said earlier, I think where Yorkshire are unfortunate as well, obviously Dan Milan's away as well, so they are. That's not to say that they've not, they've not been without a large old part of their side for this week. But you win championships, you lose championships over 14 games, and like Gloucestershire have won their last 2, but they're finishing bottom. There's no. It's the way it works, isn't it? Like you could get your points earlier in the season, I guess, and they're not in this position going into the last day.
That's the Definitive take on it. Guys, we're coming to the end of the show and the end of the series as well. Hopefully we'll be back next year. I've absolutely loved doing this show. I've actually just loved listening to you guys talk about county cricket, to be honest with you. So hopefully the listeners have too. But before we leave, and I can see that George is being pressurised to leave Edgbaston Cricket Ground.
I'm stopping the cleaners doing their work, which is no. I'm very grateful for you. Thank you. No, don't be sorry. I'm sorry.
Very quickly, George, your one takeaway from the County Championship 2022.
Oh, bloody hell, I wish you'd given me some notice on that.
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
It's still bloody great, if I'm honest. It's challenged, it's got problems, but, again, I'll go back to sort of family stuff. Your children might have problems at times. They're still bloody lovely.
Nick?
I had marginally more time than George. I think there's been a lot of really good cricket. I don't mean that in a bland way. I mean that, a lot of batters scored 1,000 runs. And in the end, actually, a lot of bowlers taken 40 to 60 odd, 70 odd wickets, which I suspect is the, versus previous years when it's been a real struggle to 1,000 and you've had all sorts of guys taking 50, 60 wickets. I suspect that's a pretty good balance to have stumbled upon. And look, if you've got it go down to the final day in one way or another, final round as it did, rather, certainly in both divisions, then we're at the top and the bottom, then, it's probably a sign of a decent competition, I would say.
And what about you, Harmy? At the start of the very first following on county cricketer, you tipped Matt Potts to be the one to watch and Surrey to win the county championship. What's your takeaway moment from the year?
I'm like George, that this game is still the best. It's still a pinnacle for me. Always will be. And over the last couple of years, we've neglected it. Again, we've come back to taking a beating in the Ashes to have a serious look at what's wrong with the game. Pitches became the big thing. Well, actually, we looked after it at the start of the season, and the majority of the season, the pitches were great. Pitches were a lot better. And you look at, like Nick said, there's a lot more batters scored runs, less wickets for the top end. I mean, there's only one bowler took 60 wickets this season. So for me, if you look after it and you protect it, you'll get rewarded from it. And I think we have done this year because we got a lot of counties got a lot of stick from the minute we left Australia till the minute the first ball was bowled in first class cricket this year. So for me, I think if we protect it and don't neglect it, we'll get it. We will get benefits from it. And I think that's what we've had this summer, because I think we've had
brilliant stuff,
some very, very good cricket, and we've also had some good performances in county cricket. Let's be fair. We've got an opening batter out of county cricket in Alex Lees. Whether he stays there or not, who knows? Ollie Pope went into a tough role as an England number 3 in the form of his life, scoring nearly 600 runs in the first 5-6 games of the season. And if somebody had offered Matt Potts a whole season for Durham 12 months ago, he would have snapped your hands off, and he's got 4 England caps. For me, that's come out of county cricket. So, can't be all bad.
And it's been really good fun doing this, guys. Thank you, John. Thanks for inviting. Thank you, John, for inviting us. And I really, really love the fact that Harmy still has that passion. A lot of older pros, retired pros, they become a bit sour and disillusioned. But I bloody love his passion. I love it. It's spirit reviving. So it's been really good fun to do this, and thanks to the feedback from the listeners too.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Well, look, I've
absolutely
loved it.
I felt vastly underqualified at times.
Oh, shut up, mate. Sometimes.
Sadly, you're the only one who's competent.
If any of the listeners are wondering who I am, I'm staring into my screen, wondering the same thing.
Well, look, guys. Hopefully,
thanks for listening
next year. Yeah, and watching. But yeah, look, it's been great bringing this to you. Talk Sport and the Cricketer magazine and Harmy as well, and hopefully we'll be back next year. And my standout memories is just for all of Bazball, for all the brilliance, and don't get me wrong, Trent Bridge was amazing. At tea on day 5, still not knowing which way a test match is going, that's what you want. But my favourite moments of the summer...
sorry, one.
No, it wasn't even that. Do you know what it was? It was today. It was today, and it was also the worst bit. It was Surrey losing in the NatWest in the Vitality Blasters Yorkshire. It hurt so much, and it just reminded me about how much I care. That's really it. And then, of course, to then beat Yorkshire and win the title was obviously quite sweet as well. Anyway, that's enough about Surrey. Sam Moorehead's going to get my case. I'll see all you guys, two of you guys, at the Cricket Writers next week. And Harmy, I'll see you when I see you. But yeah, thanks for listening and watching. Following on County Cricketer, we will be back.